Welcome to the Heart of Health and Science podcast. Today we're talking about the importance of balancing our work life and our personal life. Sometimes that gets really hard to do. It's a skill set that we develop over time. One thing about healthcare is that no matter if you're in nursing, if you're in pharmacy, if you're in respiratory therapy, if you're in any part of healthcare, there will come a time that you'll need to make a decision on how do I best balance my work and my life. In healthcare, because it's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week organization, we have a lot of options and a lot of flexibility to help us figure out what best works for our life. We can work weekends, days, nights, weekdays, days, or nights. We have a lot of options that maybe other professions don't have offered to them. Today specifically, we're going to be talking with someone that I have the pleasure of working with every day, who has really done a lot of work on how to balance her work life with her personal life and her personal life with her work life. I always struggled with that. As I was doing shift work as a registered nurse, I would work 12-hour shifts, come home and try to cram 12 hours of a missed day at home into the few hours I had at night with my family, with my children. And I found out over time that that was just an impossible task. And I was putting too much on myself, too much of an expectation on myself. Over the course of time, I really started to pay attention to how other people were able to balance out just a little, how they could feel more fulfilled in both areas of their life and just eliminate that guilt feeling that we tend to carry with us because we're letting one thing down while we're doing the other or letting this down while we're doing this one. So I struggled with that. And it took me quite a while to figure out any sort of balance that worked for me. I think the key to that is really determining what is purposeful, meaningful, and worthwhile in your life, and really focus in on that and let everything else around fall into the place that it's best to fall into at that time in your life. So today, to further that conversation, I have with me Brooklyn, who I get to work with every single day. And it's one of the bright spots of the day, actually. Actually, the whole team that I get to work with they're amazing. And they seem to balance so much and do it effortlessly. Today, we get to talk with Brooklyn and how does she balance it with her young family and her leadership career. So, Brooklyn, I'd like to welcome you to our podcast today, and I'd like for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, what brought you into nursing, what brought you into leadership, and how you're finding that balance, and if you think you found it at all.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here. So I have been at Liberty for 5 years now, and I manage the clinical nursing resource pool. So all of my staff, they go everywhere in the hospital. I am happy to be married to my husband, and we share a 5-year-old son together, Riggs. And I will say that I feel like work-life balance has been something that I've been just leading. It's an ever-changing thing. And healthcare is ever-changing. So it ebbs and flows all the time. So I'm always learning on ways to balance it. But I really enjoy sharing what I do to hopefully help others in leadership or even staff nurses. I think we're seeing that a lot of people are having issues with that and helping them find a balance. So I will say, I definitely have improved, but I definitely have a long ways to go, and I'm constantly learning about it.
I remember one of the first conversations that we had when I first came to Liberty and Liberty Hospital. One of the first conversations was how many hours have you worked this week? And how do you see your family? And when do you sleep? And do you ever take any downtime? And from that point to where we are now, I think you've really done a lot of work on trying to find that. Can you maybe walk us through some of the trials and tribulations that you experienced while you were finding that little bit of balance?
I was working with a team that was not new to me, but working with a team that I was new to leading it. So when that happens, I think that you have to invest a lot of time in getting to know your staff, and rightfully so. But it still takes time that, away from your family. And it was great to have a leader that was able to say, hey, ask those questions. I think that that's so important. And that's been one of the reasons that I've been able to just take the time to explore on what works for me. There has been several challenges whenever, with my baby was 1 at the time, and for him to, have a rough night sleeping, those things are hard to work through the day. But it's just finding what works for you, and everyone is different. Um, but yeah, I think it's been to have a leader that is helpful and to point that out, as well as have a team. Our leadership team is great. I know that I can lean on one of them if I'm like, hey, I could you cover call tonight? And that has been so helpful to have that.
That really is helpful. And I have found that with the team that we both get to work with, uh, everyone is just ready to jump in and help the other out. We know that within healthcare that sometimes there are incredibly busy times. Sometimes, our volume drops down just a little bit and it's not quite as busy, and we're able to take some downtime back. We're able to just really fill our soul again outside of work. Now, I'm one of those, I think, odd ducks maybe, in that I get so fulfilled from the work that I'm able to do. I get to talk with the patients that entrust their lives to us. I get to talk with them on a daily basis. And then the nurses that are able to provide the care to them, when I talk to them, I just feel so much energy because the work they do it's remarkable. I am never not astonished by the work that's done within a hospital. And it's not only nursing, it's all of the different professions that come together and make a really tough time for a patient better or as good as it could possibly be. And our leadership team does that for each other as well. I'm on the other side of the work-life balance struggle because my children are grown and I don't have littles in the house. You do, however, have a little guy in your house. What kind of conversations do you have with him when you come in late from work or you're getting ready to go into work? You've been called in or something along those lines. What kind of questions does he ask you? Not to be too personal.
No, not at all. And that's one thing is, although we're talking about work-life balance, I heard a term recently of work-life integration. And I think that I really liked it because balance, sometimes we can think of, it's on a scale. It tips, it needs to be a certain percentage. Being a professional, a lot of times you have work-life integration. So it's about not necessarily having these hard to find lines in and out, but how do you infuse those together to just make them work? Yeah, I loved that too. So he knows about what I do at the hospital. So, how you said that it filled your bucket. Yeah. I have a very similar outlook. I think as much as I contribute to my job and healthcare in general and to our patients and our team, that it contributes just as much to me. It gives me a whole new perspective on life, and I just genuinely enjoy the job that I do. So I think liking your job, or if you love your job, that's a huge bonus. But he knows that mommy gets to go to work. It's not something I have to do. I get to take care of people.
Yes.
He knows where we say hi to the hospital when we drive by. He knows what I do there. And he was like, hey, mommy, who did you take care of today? What nurses did you see? And so it creates a meaning behind that. And then I typically, when I look at my calendar, I try to gauge on being proactive. So I know if I need to do some check-ins with night shift staff, that I need to come in on night shift. I try to be proactive in that. So then maybe the next morning or that afternoon, I either take Riggs to go get donuts or we schedule the afternoon at the park. So it is just about finding that balance. So, hey, buddy, Daddy's going to put you down tonight, but mommy is going to take you to the park after school tomorrow. We're going to have so much fun and have a picnic. What do you want? Yeah. So it's just balancing it out as much as you can.
Sometimes I would like to go on a picnic after work because I think that sounds like so much fun.
I look forward to it.
So let us learn a little bit more about you, professionally speaking. What took you into nursing, what made you go into nursing, and what has kept you there, and then branching out from clinical care or patient care into leadership, where you're able now to take care of the staff who are taking care of the patients. Can you walk us on that progression of your career?
So I first became a nurse because my mom, she had when I was about 5, she had a significant injury that led to her being disabled. So I was in the hospitals a lot. I very much remember there were 2 nurses, their both names were Lori, that they worked in the pain clinic. And when my mom would have frequent appointments there, they would dress me, they call me Dr. Brooke. They would dress me up, gloves, stethoscope, all the things, and just made a really unpleasant time in my life much more enjoyable. Even when my mom was hospitalized for reasons that she didn't need the pain clinic, but they knew that she was there, they would come visit me and they
Oh,
would come take me out for smoothies. And they were just remarkable. And I will never forget that the impact that they had on our family during that time, and specifically me, who was young and didn't understand a lot. So that was like a moment that I was like, you know what? I want to do that. I want to care for people like that. And so nursing really has always been what I wanted to do. And so I will say that why I'm in it and continue to enjoy it has changed a little bit. So when my son was born, he had some health issues where I very much experienced the patient side of things. And from a different perspective, he was a baby, I'm his only advocate. And I was probably sometimes the patient that all the nurses didn't really love to have because you see what like the vulnerability in that. And you see just from a completely different perspective on even though I knew a lot about healthcare, there was a lot of unknowns. And I think that that drove me to be a better nurse, to communicate things in a way that makes sure that everybody understands that your patient's not just your patient, you have their family, you have,
right.
yeah, just more holistic. And so there have been those moments that have definitely changed the drive on why I'm in nursing. But they've all consistently comes nursing's hard, but I've always come back to it is always worth it. It is very meaningful and something that I've always enjoyed, despite the hard times.
Yeah. Yeah. Healthcare in general can be really challenging. There's this emotional outlay that happens. And sometimes you just go home and you're just emotionally drained and you can't really put your finger on why, but it's just that constant pouring out to those who are in our care. Uh, when patients come in to the hospital and become our patient, I frequently do trainings and teachings that seek to remember the person and the patient. And the more we can get to know that person, the more relaxed that they can be. One of the things that I've shared with a lot of people is that in a hospital that I have worked previously, we had a patient that was I think he was in the ortho unit maybe, and he was just sad. He was quiet, and he didn't have a lot to talk about. And so the staff called and said, "Would you mind rounding with this particular person today?" And I said, "Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about him." And so they told me as much as they could. And so I went in later on in the day, and I introduced myself, and I said, "I just wanted to come around, and first off, I wanted to make sure that the care you're receiving is exceptional. I wanted to make sure that's happening." He said, "Yeah, everything's been great." And I said, "Let me ask you a question. If you weren't a patient today in our hospital, what would you, the person, be doing instead?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I would be with my golden retriever dogs. Do you know that I breed golden retrievers? And I really miss them, and I would like to get out of here so I can get back to what I'm doing." And he came absolutely to life, talking about his golden retrievers and the business around that, how he trains them, how he just loves playing with them. And the staff slowly started coming in because they were hearing this really robust conversation coming out of the room. And it wasn't anything magical. It wasn't anything special that I did beyond asking, if you weren't here in the hospital today, what would you be doing? And I think if sometimes anyone in healthcare, could take a step back and remember that these are individual people that are entrusting their life to us, that if we just take the time to get to know them just a little bit deeper, then their experience will be better, which goes back to the experience you just described with those nurses reaching out to you because they knew that this little girl was scared that her mom was hurting. Mm-hmm. And they made that as a good memory as opposed to a bad memory. And I love that healthcare has the ability to do that. And I hope that we take a moment to remember that every opportunity that we have to remember. So shifting just a little bit, on a day-to-day basis, what are the things that you get to do in healthcare that just fill your cup, that make you feel like you're coming to life again? Not that you weren't, but just fill your cup and make you just feel so much joy. What are those things? There's so much joy to be found in healthcare.
Really, a day in my life is I walk in the morning. I'm an early morning person. So
yes, you are.
Yeah. Walking in the morning, get a cup of coffee. And just from the time I walk in, just being in the presence of the people that I get to work with from all different disciplines, and usually get a cup of coffee, look over staffing, and then get to connect with some of my nurses. So I love the ability to chat with my nurses, whether it is work, personal things if they are trying to work through. I think that, when you come to work as a nurse, you come as your whole person. And so just taking care of them, doing what I can, then getting to jump on our daily huddle. We talk about our wins of the day. I love to hear that. We get to share stories about good things that happened in the hospital over the last 24 hours. And then just getting to connect with my other coworkers and teammates that we can discuss different things, solutions, problem solve. Honestly, I love a good challenge. So sometimes if there is something that comes up, we need to work on something challenging, kind of ping-ponging ideas off of each other, is something that I really enjoy. And just I get to witness all of these different acts of compassion and people going above and beyond all the time in the hospital. And I be really cognizant of noticing those. So I know everyone's job duties, and I will constantly see people go just that extra step. Like, the patient really likes Pepsi, but we don't carry that on the floor. So that staff member went down and got a Pepsi from the cafeteria. Getting to witness those, I get to see a lot of good in people.
Yeah. Some of my favorite stories, I guess, or favorite experiences in a hospital setting are high school seniors that just are getting ready to go to their prom. And mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or somebody significant to them is in the hospital. So they come up, this whole little entourage of high schoolers that are getting ready for their prom, they come up to the hospital and they show that person, how they look in their gowns and their tuxes. And it's so fun to watch because they're excited, all the staff are excited, and that patient, they just brighten up and they beam because this very important person to them has come up and showed them how they look for the prom. We've had weddings in the hospital for either the bride or the groom as a patient or their family member as a patient, and they wanted them to be included. So we've had weddings, which is I love watching those. It just invites us into a part of them that we otherwise wouldn't be able to see. That very deep, intimate part of them that we have the ability to be able to be part of from time to time. I love that. So as we are moving forward in healthcare, as we're moving forward in nursing, what kind of things do you think are some of the larger challenges that we're facing? And how do you think you're going to be able to navigate those? This is an impossible question, by the way. How do you think you can navigate those challenges while still being able to integrate both work and family in your life?
We are 24/7, as you mentioned earlier. That is something, and nursing is facing a shortage. So a lot of our nurses are working extra shifts. Again, I think that is just a conversation that I have with my staff. If they're picking up extra, hey, I really appreciate you picking up extra, but it's been an extra shift a week for the past few weeks. What are you doing to take care of you? Do we need to schedule you for a stretch off? So those are all just ways that we help staff with that. And then just making sure that you can refill during those times that you are off of work. So we do have a recharge room that we have at our
Yes, we
hospital
do.
that we encourage staff, like, hey, if you need a minute, and sometimes it's just 2 minutes. You know, hey, if you need a minute, take a minute.
Take a breath.
Yeah, and just teaching about the things that a lot of people think that self-care is only the physical. They think about things like going to get a massage, taking a long shower, taking a hot bath. Now, don't get me wrong, I love those things, but there's also different types of self-care, physically, spiritually. What are those things? And identifying what works for you. You're like, oh man, I slept 9 hours, and then you wake up and you're like, I'm still not rejuvenated. And sometimes it's because there's all these different kinds of self-care we don't really think about. Has it been too long since you've called, someone on the phone, a relative? Has it been too long since you've got to feel sunshine and feel the sunshine? So I know there's several things for me. I need to be outside. I need to get fresh air, and I need sunshine. It's really identifying what is your things that help fill you, and then fitting that in. So for example, I know I'm not the only one that loves sunshine, especially when it's been in the winter. So I'll do my staff check-ins. If they are able to come off the floor, I'm like, hey, let's go for a walk around the gardens. And so we're fortunate enough to have gardens outside the hospital.
They're beautiful too.
They're gorgeous. So
Yeah.
we go out and we have a walk, and then we chat. And that has been just find ways that you can work that in. So yes, it is very challenging. Healthcare is ever changing. I think that's a great thing about it, but I also think that you are always learning. So just staying up on what you can do to always be present as much as you can and refill your bucket.
Yeah. One of the things that we both experienced, as did, the world, was the COVID pandemic. And I was here in Liberty for part of that. For the majority of that, I was in a different organization, in a different state altogether. And it was incredibly hard for healthcare workers. We would come in day and night. We would stay. I remember being at the hospital. I was working at the time greater than 24 hours at a time because, there was just such a need. There was a need that the staff had, that I felt that they couldn't be alone as they would walk out of a patient room and just fall apart because they didn't know how to help this person anymore beyond what they've already done. They didn't know what to do. And, all of us take it so seriously. And what more can I do? How can I best help? And when we went to what we felt like the end of the rope, I would see so many walk out of a room and just lean down against drop from the wall down to the floor and just put their head in their hands and just cry because it was just so hard. Now, during that time, I know you experienced all of that as well, but during that time, do you think that healthcare workers in general did a decent job of taking care of themselves and their family and finding that way to integrate even during a pandemic? I don't think we did such a great job because we're such givers, and we really wanted to help as much as we could and do as much as we could for all of the right reasons. On the other side of that pandemic, I wonder about the personal toll that was taken. So I just probably put 4 questions into that sentence and that little talk for you. But how do you think we as nursing profession, as healthcare profession did during that? And how do you think we can get better on the other side?
I agree. I don't think that we did a great job about being able to and I think you're so aware of everyone else's needs that nurses we're givers, and we want to serve those around us. So really identifying your own needs was hard, and I think we kind of seen that too as COVID was going away. It was a little bit slower for nursing to realize COVID is going away. Sometimes we would be overreactive towards things that it was like, hey, we're no longer in those times. This is going to be okay. There's more masks downstairs. It's not the last one in the box,
Yes.
So I think just changing their mindset, and then trying to be as supportive as we can and meet everyone where they're at. I think some people were able to process things in the moment. Other people, it was 6 months after COVID ended. I think some people are still they'll have a COVID patient that triggers something from when they were back in that time, and it brings that up again. So just really teaching them to be self-aware and around people around you. If you see someone having a hard time, if you just notice that your coworker got quiet, hey, what's up? If I try the people around me, I, get to know and build those relationships with. So if I see that they're having an off day, hey, you're having an off day. But no, I think that's something that nursing can continue to get better at. I think we have a long way to go in that. Hopefully they have a good support system. I think families of nurses are just as important as the nurse because they're the ones that help take care of them when they're home. And I'm lucky to have a family that supports me and a husband that says, hey, do you need a minute? And so I think that those are all really important things. But yeah, I think we could have done better at that.
Yeah, I think we didn't do so great for the right reasons, as we define them.
And I think they always say, if your airplane's going down, put your mask on first. And you truly think about how you show up whenever you are tired, hangry, all those things, and you're not showing up as your best self. So take care of yourself so that you're not short when you get home, so that you are able to sit down and have that leisure conversation with the patient to put them at ease. It really is important to show up as your best.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what type of things that you've experienced through your career, not just limited to the pandemic, but through your entire career, what kind of things give you hope for the future? And before you answer that, I know that prior to coming to Liberty Hospital, you were doing something a little bit different within healthcare. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what that was and how it was trying to integrate that work-life integration together with that?
So before I was at Liberty Hospital, I was a director of a surgery area as well as specialty clinics. And that was a very demanding job. I, though, really enjoyed it. Me and my husband both had careers. He was gone on the railroad, so he would be gone for, 5-6 days a week typically. And that was okay. We're both very independent people who were in jobs that we really enjoyed. When I had my son and he had some health issues, I needed to resign from that position. It was either going to be hiring someone that was a nurse to be staying home with our son, or I was going to need to do something differently. So I have zero regrets about that, but had to leave that position. And then I, though, was very, very adamant that I did not want to stop working altogether, because nursing does contribute to, it fills my bucket. So I was like, hey, I want to go on PRN. I heard great things about Liberty Hospital. So I went on PRN. And as my son continued to get better, I took a house supervisor position and then stayed in that role a couple of years. And then whenever my son was thriving and doing great, was able to step into a nurse manager position at Liberty. So yeah, I love it.
I think, that just reminds me about healthcare in general. It seems like no matter what part of your life you're in, you have no children yet, or you have very young children, or your children are grown, or you haven't wanted to have children, or you haven't had children, whatever that is. You're married, you're not married, you're whatever part of your life you're in, healthcare fits because it's so robust. And you mentioned that you went PRN. Not everybody has that option or even knows what that means. So do you want to talk about that a little bit and how that differs from, working every day of the week or full time, what that means to somebody maybe considering going into healthcare as an option?
PRN just means that you work as needed. So I was actually able to work with my manager, actually on the ortho floor, and set up a schedule that my in-laws or my dad was able to watch our son when I was working. So that flexibility was great because then we never had to find outside care, which during that time he really needed. So that allowed me to feel like I was able to still stay in the nursing realm while being there for my family. And then I do remember when I went into leadership, when I went back into leadership, full-time capacity, I did have a moment of, oh my gosh, this is a lot. This is a lot.
It is a lot.
And feeling responsible to make sure that My employees had everything that they needed. So I had a moment of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I don't know if this was completely different than when I had this role before and I didn't have our son. And this is different. And it's a lot to juggle. And I think you really have to. I did a lot of contemplating and just talking with my family. And it came down to the fact of, I love my career. And I never wanted to, I'm setting the example for my son. And I never wanted to show him, like, hey, you have to choose. Either you're there for your family or you're in a career that you enjoy. I wanted to be able to be like, I want to show him that there is a way to get both. And so you do have to just prioritize. You have to think about what is most important to you and stick to those priorities and really align your values into how you spend your time. But there are things that you don't get to spend as much time on. Like, for example, if you're somebody that loves your yard pristine, you got to make some choices. But if you make those choices very deliberately, it now becomes something that, maybe you don't mow every 3 days, but that isn't because you're slacking, but is a choice that you have deliberately made that so that you get an extra night with your family during the week. So I think that just takes a lot of guilt away too, just being very deliberate about your time.
Yeah. I have struggled with that same type of guilt over the course of my career. And I'm not exempt from it now. When I work long hours or I'm on the road a lot, I wonder, am I slacking for the team that I'm working with and for, or am I slacking for those at home? And I have when I'm at home, I try to be at home, and I have other responsibilities there as well, and I try to be fully in, knowing that my ear is in tune to my phone should I be needed somewhere else. And sometimes I get kind of caught in that spiral of, if I do this, then I won't do this. If I do this, then this slacks. If I go to that, then who's going to struggle here? And sometimes I think about me, that I take myself just way too seriously sometimes. And there are so many other people and so many other ways that the needs can be met for those around me and around our teams at work or my family. There are other ways. It doesn't have to all fall to me. And sometimes I just think, I'm taking it too seriously, taking myself too seriously. And so then once I'm like, oh, okay, I fell into that hole again, I deliberately climb out and I purposefully do something goofy. I'll do a spontaneous trip that I otherwise would not have done, or I'll go to a movie that I otherwise would not have taken time to watch, or I harass my husband just relentlessly. Sometimes I feel bad about it, but not usually, not usually.
Well, and two, whenever you look at your time, it's really valuable instead of just looking at one day, right? Especially if you're a nurse.
Right.
Sometimes you're working a 12-hour shift. You're like, oh my gosh, I did not see my family today. Instead of just looking at one day and that 24 hours, look at a week. A week has 168
Yes.
hours. How did you spend that week? Did you work, late 4 nights a week, but you were able to get off early on Friday and you had a weekend uninterrupted of just family fun? And just looking at it that way can really help you see a broader picture about how you're able to spend your time. And so I think that but it can get easy to just look at that one day and be like, oh, I didn't do that today. But you had 3 other days that you got to see your family.
I love that. I haven't heard that as an analogy. It's allowing yourself to look at a bigger view, look at the larger picture. Okay, Brooklyn, I have one more question for you today. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Before we close, do you have a favorite story that you can share, whether it's about this work-life integration or a favorite work story? This is my favorite question. It's my favorite.
This is a good one. So I do. I'm trying to think. Probably I'll go with favorite work story.
Okay.
So whenever it was during COVID times, we had a family member that was the time of that was there was only one person that was able to come in for visits, and with the situation, the patient was passing, and that family member, we were making sure that we had everything in place so that they were able to have a last visit with them. The really tough part about that was that family member didn't have support there with them in that time. And so I knew about the situation and was helping facilitate that in my house supervisor role. I was able to go up there with the family member. Before that, they hadn't seen their passing loved one in a couple of weeks. So I was able to kind of talk them through on what to expect, what to see what they're going to see in the room, different PPE that they needed on, why that was important, and just kind of what those moments would look like. And then I was also able to hold that family member's hand while they held their loved one's hand because they needed that support. So that was just a time that stood out to me that I was so grateful to be able to step in. And that is, as nurses, and what we get the ability to do is step in when people need it most. So that is one that has always stuck out to me that I'm so glad, I was able to be there, that the patient was able to be there during that moment, and have that time as a family.
Yeah, I love that. It's just the art and the compassion of nursing that was demonstrated in that story. So, Brooklyn, thank you for coming onto the podcast today and talking about your success that you have found integrating your work and life balance. I so appreciate your time. And thank you so much for coming and watching today and being part of this discussion with us today. I'd like to invite you, our viewers and listeners, to send us your ideas for topics and connect with us. You can find us on TikTok at the Heart of Health and Science, or connect with me personally on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Until next time.